transforming student learning, deepening faculty engagement, and partnering with community organizations for social change. We do this by connecting UR and Richmond communities in collaborative and sustained partnerships. Through courses, research projects, fellowships like the ones you'll hear about tonight, discussion series, and reflection, we bring students, faculty, staff, and community partners together to explore educationally meaningful approaches to community-identified needs. We strive to meet our commitments through 4 core values: collaboration, intentionality, full participation, and lifelong learning. The Civic Fellows program, in my mind, is really a distillation of the CCE's mission and values. It's a signature program, and as the center is 10 years old, the Civic Fellows program is 9 years old, and we've grown up together. And I'm really proud that this is a hallmark of the work that the Center for Civic Engagement does. In thinking about what the students are going to present tonight, and I haven't had a chance to hear from all of them about their summer experiences, so I'm as anxious as the rest of you to hear their presentations. My own summer fellowship experience came to mind a long, long time ago. I was a college student. And during that time, I really wanted to have an internship, but I couldn't afford to give up a summer job in order to do that. At Davidson College, they had 4 paid internships a year, and I was fortunate enough to receive one of them. The one I received was to do nonprofit work in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I was so excited to have the opportunity to work at the Children's Law Center, because when I was in college, my life's dream was to be a lawyer, and I was going to be I was going to do children work. My whole plan, so excited, I was going to get this job, they were going to hire me as soon as I went to law school, all the way. Except it didn't go that way. My transformational experience during that summer, where I had the luxury of having funding to pursue my dreams, was I realized I didn't want to go to law school, and I definitely could not handle being a lawyer and defending children and families. So I took a swerve in another direction. What I learned that summer is that I care about structural inequality. And that's what I went on to study and think about. And the internship that I learned what I wanted to do versus what I didn't want to do took me to a different path. And if you follow the string and the thread, and it's very windy, it's not quite straight, it led me to the work I'm doing now that challenges me and feeds me and that I love very much. The University of Richmond's commitment to supporting summer internship and research experiences is one of the many reasons that I'm honored to work here. As part of the campaign for Richmond, the university is committed to providing funds for these kind of experiences that enrich students and that help you find your path and see doors close and other ones open, so that students can all have this opportunity during their 4 years here at the university. This past summer, as part of the UR Summer Fellowship Program, 300 students received over $1 million in research and internship funding, and I just think that's phenomenal. I think we should just clap for that. Tonight truly are transformational, and this is just the beginning. The Civic Fellows program is one of 8 programs that comprise the UR Summer Fellowship program, and we are so proud to play a small part in supporting these transformational experiences for UR students. Civic Fellows, with the support of their site supervisors at nonprofits and their wonderful faculty mentors, many who are here tonight, have an opportunity to integrate their academic course of study with what they're doing in the field. And it's this marriage of theory and practice that we believe provides such meaningful experiences for our awesome Civic Fellows. We're so excited to hear about them tonight. At this time, I would like to give a huge thank you to Cassie Price, who's going to come up next. She manages this program and many other things for the Center for Civic Engagement, and through her leadership, it's grown more excellent every year, and we're so lucky to have her on our team. And I would be remiss if I didn't thank Heather Ashton, who I'd like to stand up because she's not going to come up here to speak. Heather made this whole thing happen on top of the team. Heather supports the Bonner Scholars Program, which is in its busiest month, and yet she found time to make this beautiful event happen for all of us tonight, and I really appreciate her efforts. So now I'm going to turn it over to Cassie. Thank you, Cassie.
Well, again, thank you all for being here. It's great to see so many familiar faces in the audience, as well as some new folks. So I just wanted to give you a little history on the Civic Fellowship Program. The Burham Civic Fellowship Program was inaugurated in 2005, and in honor of our Chaplain Emeritus, David Burham, who wife Ellen, and if you all would raise your hands so everyone can see you. So because Dr. Burhans took a very proactive approach to civic engagement when he was our chaplain here for 30 years. And so in honor of his service here, this program was launched in 2005. And we just think it's a fantastic program. It's really one of the center's signature programs. And in many ways was the model that the university's summer fellowship program was built on. Subsequent to the Burhans Civic Fellowship, we've had the good fortune of adding two new fellowships to the Civic Fellowship program. Lawrence March, who graduated from our B school in 1982 and our graduate B school in 94, he dedicated a fellowship to the memory of his sister, Deborah L. Marsh, who was a very actively engaged in the Richmond community and was the president of Meals on Wheels and took that organization to a whole new level. So that program was launched, and then a couple of years ago, a third program, the F. Amanda DeBusk program, Civic Fellowship program, was launched by one of our alumna, F. Amanda DeBusk, who is a lawyer in the D.C. law firm of Hughes, Hubbard, and Reed, where she specializes in international trade law. And she graduated from West Hampton College in '78. So I don't know if anyone is here from the Marsh or DeBusk families. If they are, could you raise your hand? They may not be here. We'll clap you next We'd also like to thank the Seaport Grand Foundation. They have funded 3 of our fellows this past year through this program, and they've just done a fantastic job. I think this is the 4th year we've received funding from the Seaport Grand Foundation. They are very excited about the connection that the Civic Fellowship program makes between the community and academic studies. So we thank the Seaport Grand Foundation. So, what is a Civic Fellow? Well, a Civic Fellow commits to doing between 320 and 400 hours of work at what would otherwise be an unpaid or nominally paid internship in the nonprofit government sector. In addition to completing this type of internship, a Civic Fellow also commits to academic study that's quite rigorous, and they obtain a faculty mentor to help them with this academic study. So they are very intentionally connecting their academics to their civic engagement throughout the summer. And Amy and I like to think that this makes the Civic Fellowship one of the most outstanding of all the UR summer fellowships for this intentional blending of the academic and the civic engagement piece. This summer we had 10 Civic Fellows, 5 of whom stayed here in Richmond and supported our local government and nonprofit sector, and 5 of whom went elsewhere. We had one in Kentucky, one in North Carolina, North Carolina, Maryland, and then we had 2 abroad, one in the Dominican Republic and one in Peru. So they did fantastic work. You're going to hear very shortly about the work that they did, but they engaged in topics relating to education, relating to environmental sustainability, human rights, community development, voter registration, education, urban agriculture, so just a whole range of issues they covered. And I am going to let them introduce themselves as they come up here to speak, and they'll state their name and their class year and the organization that they were a part of. But before I finish my comments, I also just want to thank a couple of other people in the audience. If you were a faculty mentor, could you raise your hand? If you were a site supervisor, I don't know if any of our community partners are in the audience tonight. I know a couple of them wanted to come, but I don't know if they made it. Oh, we'll thank them too in absentia. And again, I do want to give a shout out to Heather back there for pulling together all the lovely reception and doing the PowerPoint, which I would never be able to figure out how to do. So many thanks to Heather as well. And with that, I'm going to let Brendan come up and kick us off. Thank you.
So my name is Brendan, and I'm a sophomore, and I work at Knight, North Carolina, in North Carolina this summer. So the issue I had to deal with was the new North Carolina voter ID law, which was passed in 2013 under a new Republican supermajority and Republican legislature. The New York Times called it the strictest voting law in the entire country. This law required North Carolina state-issued IDs, but went to an extreme that other states did not, and almost purposely targeted people of color and youth that traditionally don't vote the way the state legislature wanted them to vote. So it prevented student ID cards, even from North Carolina public schools, to be used, which is much stricter than most states. For example, the many of the students in this room go and vote in November will all use our spider cards. Out-of-state driver's license, which again, unfortunately affects college students. Even state-issued worker IDs were forbidden from being used, which that group, again, overwhelmingly votes a certain way. However, you can use your gun license. This law also did other things to make it harder to vote that had nothing to do with an ID whatsoever. It shortened the number of early voting days by a week, got rid of Sunday voting, which has been traditionally used by African American churches to organize community-wide vote events, and ended an early registration program that automatically registered 16-year-old students when they got their driver's license. A study was done of the success of this program in the year after that was got rid of, and over 150,000 16-year-olds used it in 2012 alone. It also got rid of same-day voting registration, which is unproportionately used by people under the age of 30, because they are far more likely to move more often. And so the point of this law is they claim it was to prevent voter fraud, which have only been 7 cases from 2000 to 2012, but it was clearly used to disenfranchise people of color, the youth, and the poor. So Knight, North Carolina was founded in 2013 by a group of discontent college students, and they're all recent graduates. My boss was 23, and the head of the field engagement was 24. I think it was the oldest guy in the organization. The intent of the organization is to encourage youth participation in democracy and voting. And they do this through various means and different programs. The main program is the Fellows Program, which is done every fall and spring. And it gives about 20 people who are 28 years or younger political stipends or stipends to continue their political engagement. Very similar to the way this program gives us money to do what we care about, and the Bonner's program gives students money to do their own community service around campus. The students are almost exclusively students of color, and many are at public universities, including UNC Chapel Hill, NC State, and many of the various HBCUs around campus. The issues are very diverse and range from voting registration drives, police brutality, and music as a tool for political involvement. The other major program includes the Vote Defenders Project, which has been followed by MSNBC and the Associated Press. Through a group on the new voter ID law, poll monitors can now go and monitor any poll site in North Carolina. And so they go there and report voting irregularities and help answer questions if people have questions about the process. The monitors are people from local communities who are interested in going out because they see this as an issue that they should get involved with. This project is sponsored by many groups in North Carolina, including the UNC Center for Civil Rights, which is an extension of the UNC Law School. Many other data activities include helping organize voting rec drives in local communities and local neighborhoods, because they found that if you know that people are going around knocking on your doors to register to vote, you're much more likely to do it. Ignite also needs students groups to protest at Board of Elections meetings to argue where polling places and precincts are being drawn and where they're being placed, because many counties in North Carolina, and this has increased since the law has empowered them to do this, have moving polling places far away from college campuses to make it harder for students, again, to vote. So my work at Ignite was split between doing fieldwork and administrative tasks. I would go out and register voters 3 or 4 days around the Triangle area, which is Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill. I would usually work at colleges and areas because they found as a young man I was able to have much higher success rate on college campuses than some of the older volunteers. One of the more fun things I was building many open mic events that were sponsored by different areas that wanted to get music as a way to get people involved. And so we always go there and do speeches and pass out voting registration forms. Maintaining multiple protests, including the Memorial Monday protests of an occupation at the state capitol building, and protests of the laws that the government has been passing in North Carolina, which are large and absurd. And we've also attended the Wake County Board of Elections meeting at multiple points, the protests where they put the NC State's precinct and that they got rid of early voting at that place, even though it has a high number of people. My administration task, I was put in charge of updating the website on a weekly basis. I managed social media outreach. I was spent most of my time when I was doing that planning for events that are happening now, that have already happened. This includes writing and promoting the fellowships program, planned protests of Hope Brother Alliance stores and organizations in North Carolina, and planned voting registration events at various music festivals and citywide events throughout North Carolina. The Youth Organizing Institute, or we always call it YY, is a youth empowerment organization that runs a camp for 30 high school students throughout the summer that get them trained in the political process. And these students are people who the system tries to bring down and disenfranchise. So it's all students of color, LGBTQ kids, or dreamers. During the school year, this group mostly works on ending the school-to-prison pipeline in Wake County and around North Carolina to keep kids in the classroom instead of in jail. YY and Ignite and a few other groups teamed up this summer that helped with the camp because they had very similar goals of youth engagement in politics. So the way I got involved with this was actually last second. One of the YY councils kind of dropped out because they need someone to fill up the task, and as the intern at Ignite, was like, you can do it. And so most of my jobs were actually administrative there too. So I helped with securing medical forms and commissionerships, and generally dealing with the parents to help them answer questions that we need to know about the kids. Planning field trips to Durham, Greensboro, and Winston-Salem. Organized food deliveries for various groups and parents in the area who wanted to deliver food to the kids at the camp. And planning a few programs. So once the camp actually started, which was my last 3 weeks in Durham, I'd spend about 2 days a week at YY, including the usual Friday field trips, supervising the students as a camp counselor, and helping to lead programs. So for my research, I focused on comparing my own movement I was part of, which is the North Carolina Voting Rights Movement, to other past grassroots social movements to consider how successful my own movement was going to be. So I studied the Birmingham bus boycott because it is generally considered the ideal social grassroots movement and has been used throughout time since it happened to really judge how successful other movements are going to be. And I also studied a successful attempt by students in Massachusetts to reform their sexual education program in their own school district because they thought it was inadequate and not good enough for them, very similar to what's going on in Jefferson County, Colorado, if you guys are following that. And I chose to study this one because it's an attempt by youth to change the system and change the area of politics involved in, which is very much what Ignite and the NC Voters' Rights Movement tries to do. So for all these movements, I studied 4 things. Did it attempt to work within the law to get the best implementation of it, or did it try to purposely get the law tossed down? Did the movement target everyday civilians or the lawmakers in power? How unified was the movement and how secure was the leadership? And did it counter-inform response to this movement? So when I was trying to judge the North Carolina Voting Rights Movement, I found it did very well with its ability to both work within the law, working with the DOE, and trying to get it tossed out to the court system. And it did very well again working with lawmakers and everyday people. Where it automatically, drastically came up short was its lack of unified leadership and unified goals. There was no one clear leader and no one clear person who could take charge, and each group had very different goals, ranging from just a general progressive agenda to just working on voting rights. And so there was no one who could say we've been successful now. But ironically enough, it all ultimately came down to gerrymandering. Because without court intervention, the only people who have say in North Carolina are going to be Republicans. North Carolina is the most gerrymandered state in the country currently, and because of that, no one but the majority power party has a say. So I actually had a map brought up. This is what North Carolina currently looks like for our voting districts, and this is what math says it should look like. And so they're very different and very not even. And so there's really nothing that we figured out you can do without courts. But luckily, last week, the courts came with an order saying that extending early voting and reinstituting same-day voting registration at these places. So we've had some success and should keep going to the Supreme Court. And finally, I'd like to thank the Hurricanes, of course, for their physical support and everything. I'd like to thank Cassie and Heather and the rest of the CC for both their support over the school year and over the summer. And of course, I'd like to thank Dr. McGowan for this would be impossible to have without him. Thank you.
And I'm a senior here at the University of Richmond, and I interned at the University of Louisville Medical Center this summer with the Global Health Initiative. First off, I'd like to thank the Hurricanes for the amazing opportunity this summer. It was phenomenal, and I'd like to thank my academic advisor, Dr. Mays, and Cassie Price for guiding us through the whole experience, and Dr. Ruth Carrico, who couldn't be here, she's in Louisville. She's my supervisor for this summer. So I'm going to start off by talking about the Global Health Initiative overall on a national scale. So the Global Health Initiative works to save lives and improve equality for populations around the world. And recent U.S. investments in the global health field have had a tremendous impact on low-income areas around the world, specifically those with a high prevalence of disease. And so their main goal is to help prevent the spread of infectious disease across the globe, as well as spread education and awareness of significant health issues. So now that you kind of have an understanding of what the Global Health Initiative is on a national scale, I'm going to talk about the University of Louisville's Global Health Initiative, or what I'll call the ULGHI. So their mission is to use their clinical capacity to provide care of patients with global health issues, to use their coordinating capacity to forge collaborations among members of the university and its surrounding community interested in global health, to use their teaching and academic capacity to train healthcare workers in the field of global health, and to use their research capacity to contribute knowledge to the field of global health. And they have 6 major branches, including international health and travel, refugee health and immunization, civil servant examinations, HIV/AIDS treatment, vaccines, and bone and joint protection. So this summer, I had a very wide range of tasks while I was working with the ULGHI, including social media development and management, website construction and design, creating a presentation for Research Louisville, and working with the Refugee Immunization Clinic every other week, and clinical shadowing. So I'm going to start by talking a little bit about my social networking experience that I had this summer. So prior to my work at the University of Louisville Global Health Initiative, they had basically no social media platforms whatsoever. So Dr. Carrico decided that my main task was going to be to basically what she called launch them into the 21st century. So I created a Facebook, Twitter, and Google Plus account for the ULGHI. And initially, Dr. Carrico intended for me to create the social media sites, social media platforms, for the overall ULGHI. However, since the initiative covers such a broad span of activities, we decided to primarily focus on developing these social media sites for the International Travel Clinic, which is the primary funder for every other branch of the ULGHI. So we believe that through creating such an effective marketing platform for the travel clinic, that would bring in more patients and therefore more funding for the rest of the branches of the ULGHI. And seeing that education plays such a key role in public health, the main goal for the Facebook and Twitter sites I created was to share information with the patients regarding the vaccines that were being administered at the clinic. And then the Google Plus account that I created was really made so that patients, when they're traveling abroad, if they have a medical issue and they don't feel comfortable going to a medical provider where they're traveling, then they can Skype in on what's called Google Hangouts, which you can use through Google Plus. They can Skype in and talk to a physician at the University of Louisville travel clinic and kind of figure out what they need to do or what may be going on and what the steps they need to take next. And in addition to that, one of the biggest challenges that I had this summer was the momentous task of creating a new website completely from scratch. So prior to my work at the ULGHI, I had little to no experience in web design. So you can imagine when Dr. Carrico told me, hey, you're going to make a website, I was terrified. But after some research and experimentation with different website platforms, I was able to kind of work around it and start working on a new site for them. And throughout the entire website process, I had bi-weekly meetings with Dr. Carrico, an IT professional in the office, and an IT associate in the office. And through our meetings, we realized the same issue was arising that we saw on the social media sites, that we couldn't really encompass everything the ULGHI does on one site. So we decided, okay, let's focus on who our target market is and what they need to see on our site. So therefore, we decided we were going to focus on the International Travel Clinic specifically, and then have a part of the page that featured all the other parts of the ULGHI that will eventually link to external pages about each of those parts of the initiative. In addition to developing social networking sites, I made a presentation for Research Louisville, which is an annual celebration of health-related research at U of L. And it basically is just to promote their research in the Global Medical Center overall. So I have my poster here that I made for that, and the presentation was in mid-September. So after all the presentations, if you all want to come up and take a look, you're more than welcome. Additionally, I also worked with the Refugee Immunization Clinic, every other week, and it was on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And my job there was very basic administration tasks, so like checking the refugees in for their appointment and getting them to sign their MERC forms and their medical forms, which may seem very easy and basic at first, but considering that all these patients speak little to no English, it ended up being a lot harder than it seems at times. So it was nice at some points when I was talking to like the Cubans, because I have 7 years of Spanish, so it really gave me an opportunity to practice my Spanish skills. But then when I'd be talking to people from areas such as Nepal and Somalia who don't speak Spanish, and I had to really kind of figure out some very basic communication skills that I had never had to experience before. So even though it was really tough for me at times, my work at the Refugee Immunization Clinic was still extremely rewarding. No matter what, I know there's always a negative connotation associated with shots. I mean, no one likes to get shots. But no matter what, even little bitty kids that would come into this clinic, if they had 6 Band-Aids up and down their arm after getting all these vaccines, they would just have the biggest smile on their face because they knew that they were like gaining their citizenship, because they have to get shots in order to gain citizenship in Kentucky at least. So, and it just made me really feel like we were having such a large impact on their lives, and it was extremely rewarding. In addition to my social networking work and my refugee immunization clinic work, I had the opportunity to shadow the travel clinic and the HIV/AIDS clinic. And it was really interesting to see how each of the clinics worked, but the HIV/AIDS clinic was much more intriguing to me because I'm actually writing my senior thesis on HIV/AIDS, so that was a great opportunity. So I had the opportunity to shadow one of the head physicians at the Wings Clinic, which is the HIV clinic, and she allowed me just to basically sit in on her appointment, her checkup appointments all day, which was amazing. And I also got to sit in on a few telemedicine meetings in which they video chatted with prisoners who are infected with HIV/AIDS around the state of Kentucky and talked to them about how they're managing their medication, how they're feeling, and any other medical issues that may coincide with HIV/AIDS. So each of these experiences were really great, but I would say that my sitting in on the check-in appointments was the most interesting and somewhat frustrating at times. So the U of L hospital treats or gives care to some of the most economically challenged individuals in the greater Louisville area. So these patients that I was seeing, most of them were either homeless, had recently been homeless, or were in very poor economic standing. So therefore, they weren't very good about keeping up with their medication, or when they ran out of one of their medications, they would say, oh, I've been homeless, I can't refill it, I can't afford it. Therefore, with HIV/AIDS, if you don't take one of your medications, then the virus kind of figures out, oh, there's a hole here, there's no medicine, and like wiggles its way around, and your body builds up immunity to the medication, so it begins diminishing their health again, which is terrible. So that was really frustrating to see that, because you think that we're making such significant strides with all these global campaigns to like beat HIV/AIDS, and you think we're doing so well with it, and then once I got to look at my own city, then it made me realize how much work there still really is to be done. So altogether, I feel that this internship gave me experiences that link to both my majors, which are business administration with a concentration in management and healthcare and society. So on the business side, my marketing component of my internship made me utilize what I learned in my marketing class in the real world. And then from the healthcare and society aspect, it was really cool to be able to work firsthand and see HIV/AIDS patients, and also work with other infectious diseases overall. And it made me realize that reading about it in class and in books and in lectures is one thing, but seeing these issues firsthand really reminds me that we still have so many challenges, not only globally, but even in our own communities. Thank you.
My name is Stella Hahn. I am a senior this year studying international studies and Spanish. It is so great to see all of you here tonight, and I have the great fortune of talking with you about my internship this summer in the Peruvian Amazon. This place is very special to me because it was actually my second summer there. I've been going there since last summer, and I started in December 2012. So this experience has definitely informed me about what I want to do in my future and how I structured my major, which is international development, actually. I created the concentration. And my internship is a development project called Building Conservation Capacity in a Changing Amazonia. This project is funded by the U.S. Agency for International Development, USAID, the American Council on Education and Higher Education for Development. It is essentially a partnership between the University of Richmond and the National University of Ucayali, or UNU as we call it, and it seeks to create a long-term collaboration and a regional network between our two universities, community members, and also NGOs and government organizations that are heavily involved in what is going on in the Peruvian Amazon. I first want to show you a picture. Oh. Already moved forward. This is the Peruvian Amazon. I got to go on a beautiful plane ride last summer over the Amazon. It's the whole green carpet and winding rivers. It was very beautiful. However, our program is addressing a lot of issues that are happening here as well. There's a lot of problems such as illegal logging, problems with indigenous people's land rights, and climate change is also a huge issue as well. And so I just want to point out how beautiful this place is, how vital it is for our world, but it's such a dynamic place that's constantly changing every day. But this partnership, I think, is really special because it focuses on how academia can play a role in development. It seeks to take Peruvian university students and make them into agents of change in the Peruvian Amazon by enhancing their research skills and also their professional experiences and their knowledge as well. Unfortunately, I didn't get to spend time in the actual jungle. However, I did spend time in the capital of the region where we work, and the city is called Pucallpa. This is an aerial view of the city, and I spent most of my time at the National University of Ucayali right here in our project office, where I spent time with my project director, her assistant, and interacted with these Peruvian students every day. I want to share a little bit about the objectives of our program. There are 3 components. The first one is a certificate program. So all the students get to undergo this curriculum about environmental issues, and that includes all these biodiversity conservation, indigenous people's rights, natural resource management. But on top of increasing their knowledge, they learn skills that will help them when they do their research projects in the field. So this includes ArcGIS, or Geographic Information Systems, and Global Positioning Systems as well. And I just want to show a few pictures of our students. This is Katinus and Alexander that are out in the field doing these things that I don't know how to do with GPS. And then we have our students brainstorming with our professor, Dr. Mary Fidlingbrook in the Geography Department, about safeguards and environmental governance. The second component of our project is giving the students an opportunity to work with the community, whether it's with regional NGOs or the governmental organizations. With the NGOs, students got to work on these conservation research projects that some of these organizations are conducting. And I have a photo here of our student Kelson that was working with the region's Ministry of Environment, and he got to work on the physical demarcation of protected areas in the Amazon. And overall, this is a wonderful professional experience for our students because they get to see how our government and other stakeholders in the Amazon are actually working towards the development of the Peruvian Amazon. And lastly, there's a research component, like I mentioned before. The Peruvian students are actually all thesis students. They all study environmental studies for forestry or forestry engineering. And they get to go out to indigenous communities for 2 months and work with the people there on whatever topic of their choice involving the Amazon. So this is Giovanna, and her topic was the evaluation of the environmental impacts of mahogany extraction. And she was in the community of Santa Rosa, and you can see her in this photo measuring out the size of these enormous mahogany trees that are being extracted in these areas. And once the students come back, they actually get to write an academic article about their findings. And this gets published into our academic journal that our program has created. And in addition, this component of our project involves the face of Richmond as well. I am here with the 5 Richmond students this summer that got to come and do their own research projects, and they also got to work side by some Peruvian students as well. And so that was just a really exciting experience. It was a wonderful cultural exchange, and our students really did learn a lot about Peru and get to enhance their language skills as well, while also learning about these very crucial issues that are happening in the Amazon. So my role, I was the planning and evaluation intern for this project, and I think my role is very unique in that I am sort of a liaison between the U.S. side and the Peru side. So what I do during the summers is I attend a lot of the courses, the classroom activities, the workshops, all these events, and I document exactly what is going on and collect all these numbers and data. And what I do with that is I work closely with our project directors in creating reports for the annual, semi-annual, and quarterly reports. And in addition, I write success stories that are sent to our funders, USAID, as well, to see what the results of their money that is going into the project are. So I think that is what my job description says. However, I do a little bit more as well. And the summer was definitely a growing experience for me because it was my second summer So I got to help with the travel plans of Richmond students going down to Peru. And I acted as a resource for them because they didn't know what was going on, and I felt like more grounded while I was there, so I could tell them, you know, you could go here and find more resources there for your research, or you could talk to this student that I had actually met the summer before. So that was really exciting. And lastly, I continue to update a website that I had created last summer about the successes and the results of our project. And the website is uramazonia.wordpress.com if anyone's interested. Some challenges and growth. I have definitely benefited a lot from this project. I feel like it's sort of my baby because I have been involved for a long time, but I can say firmly that I have definitely taken more initiative this summer as I knew exactly what I had to do and I wasn't getting adjusted to this new culture. And so that was a huge growing experience for me. And in addition, I've learned a lot of organizational skills. USAID is giving $750,000 for this project and they want to see results. So I have to take this data and understand how to make it legible for them. What does this money mean? You know, where is it going? What are the results? So it has made me extremely attentive to detail and really good at just gathering information and creating reports as well. And lastly, my communication and language skills have improved so much. My Spanish is a lot better than it was the first summer, and I've created such positive relationships with the Peruvian people, and just I think that the most important thing about my internship so far has been interacting with the students, and so that has been really amazing. A little bit about my research. I wanted to look into how higher education impacts regional development. And while I was there, we started looking into, or following, this university law reform. So Peru, in July, while I was at the school, passed a university law that actually centralizes the university system. And so there's more state involvement in how the university makes decisions in terms of their curricula, their mission, their finances, such. And so it was very interesting to see how this affects UNU. I was not able to go to work a few days because of some protests by students and faculty against this university reform. And this is because all the universities in Peru have something called university autonomy. They have the power to make their own decisions about how they want to run the school. So having the state involved with that caused a lot of controversy. However, this is not done, for no good reason. This Peruvian university is looking to increase the quality of education. Over the past couple of decades, there has been an increasing amount of privatization of higher education in Peru, and that has resulted in an increase in the quantity of schools, but the quality of these institutions are still lacking a lot. So that's why the state is becoming more involved. So my question for my research was, does the new university law enable or hinder UNU and other Amazonian stakeholders from addressing regional needs and demands? How is the state's decision impacting our project and what we want to build, which is regional development? And I wrote a very extensive paper about this, and I came to the conclusion that there are a lot of benefits to this university law reform. However, it also limits the ability of the school as well because, as I mentioned, the Amazon is changing every day and it's such a dynamic place. So going through the state and having to ask permission or show them everything that the school wants to implement in terms of making decisions for the community is a slower process as well. And lastly, the greatest impact for me this summer was seeing our first cycle of students actually finish our program. These are the students that were able to defend their final thesis work in front of a panel of professors, and it was a wonderful experience to see how far they've come, how much they've grown, how much they've learned, and it was an amazing experience to just experience all that. I've been involved with this project since 2012, and now in 2014 I get to see our first cycle of students finally do what they set out to do, and now I'm waiting for cycle 2. So I want to give a special thanks to Dr. David Salisbury. He really impacted me a lot when I took his class, Geographies of Amazonian, and I wouldn't have been able to go out there if he hadn't asked me to be a part of this project. And so I'm extremely grateful. Also, my site supervisor, Dr. Andrea Chavez, she's not here, she's in Florida. I'm very grateful for it. I've learned so much. And then also the Center for Civic Engagement. I'm very, very grateful for everything that they've done, all the support, and helping me really come to how I wanted to formulate my research as well. Cassie was a huge help with that. And also my speech center consultant, Suga. We did a lot of brainstorming together. It was hard for me to sort of boil this all down into one presentation. That is more than 10 minutes, I'm sorry. And also the Burkhans family. I am so grateful that I was able to return for a second summer. I don't know what I would do with all of you. So thank you for all your help. And yeah, overall.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Rand Irons, and I was our Civic Fellow this summer, working at the Local Initiative Support Corporation. The Local Initiative Support Corporation is a national organization based in New York that has a branch office here in the city of Richmond. It's a regionally focused office. They do projects all over the region from Petersburg to more rural counties to the city of Richmond. And some of these projects include the new Petersburg Library that was just created, as well as projects in Churchill more closer to home, such as Sub Rosa Bakery and others, where they administer a grant program that's set up with small businesses. And so the Local Initiative Support Corporation has had a huge role to play in the city of Richmond and community development in our city. But my specific focus was in Highland Park, which is a neighborhood in the city that they're right now beginning to look into and look into investment opportunities and community development opportunities there. And so I specifically tapped that project because of my experience volunteering as through the CCE, which has given me a lot of experience and knowledge of that community. The second place that I worked at, who partnered with LISC for this project, was Storefront for Community Design. It's on Broad Street in the Arts District. And this organization, connects communities, nonprofits, and other local organizations with urban planners, community designers, artists, and other people that can help them sort of develop programs and develop things for their communities that they normally would not have access to due to lack of funds. And so their specific projects that they were working on with LISC, their contract with LISC, was community outreach in the Highland Park neighborhood. Specifically Ryan Wren, right here in the picture, who's a UR alumni, who was working on community organizing efforts for this. My project for this summer was a community safety initiative for Highland Park. Specifically, it was to create a comprehensive security plan using this general framework that LISC has used across the country in order to improve the safety and security of the Highland Park neighborhood, to make it more conducive for further investment and other opportunities for community development. And I'm passing around the final Highland Park Community Safety Initiative if you'd like to look through it. It includes both historical efforts in that city, in that neighborhood, to improve the safety and security of the neighborhood, community development efforts, new businesses, what are the current conditions, as well as future recommendations and other stakeholders that might help out in implementing those future goals. And so I primarily worked on this throughout the summer, and specifically the people that I collaborated with were Lieutenant Lewis Mills, who's featured here in the picture. He's the police lieutenant over the 4th Precinct, which includes Northside, Richmond, and including Highland Park. And so he has an intimate knowledge of the security situation in Highland Park, and so it was a huge asset for me when I was learning about this. He's a great guy and very, very, very helpful and always willing to work with the community. Many members of the community actually have his personal cell phone number. If they have problems, they can call him if they don't feel comfortable calling 911. And I also work with Ms. Jo White, who's the head of Guardian Angels, as well as the Highland Park Neighborhood Watch Program, who has led a lot of community efforts at improving the community and working with the police in order to improve security and safety in the community. And she's been phenomenal in the work that she has done and the efforts she's made to make Highland Park a safer place. And as you'll notice in the Community Safety Initiative report, crime is down significantly over the past 10 years, and hopefully through this report and through other initiatives, they're able to improve that further. The second part of my role was community outreach, specifically along the 6 Points Commercial Corridor. It's an area in this very unique part of the community where 6 major roads meet in one intersection. And so there's a lot of businesses there, and there's a lot of potential economic activity there, but there's a lot of boarded up storefronts, as you can see, for sale signs everywhere. There's a lot of need for improvements in that community. And so what we did through this outreach was talk with store owners as well as community members to see what their needs were, but also to talk about what programs we could provide, like facade improvements. We're partnering with Capital One as well as other corporations in the city. There's money available to improve the facades of businesses to help brighten up that area and also plant new trees and shrubs to help make that area look more desirable and also increase foot traffic, as well as improve security along that corridor, because a big issue that we found through both market analysis done by BCU students and elsewhere is that there's a significant amount of money, close to $7 million, that leaves this community every year because people don't shop in the community. And so all these businesses are not receiving that business, and so they can't hire people. There's no jobs specifically in that community, and if everyone did shop on this corridor, that would be a huge boom for the community, bringing lots of new jobs and support lots of local businesses. And so the goal of this effort was to, in the future, increase investment in this community and bring more jobs in the community and really do grassroots community development that will benefit everyone in the community through these outreach efforts. The academic component of this effort was done with Dr. O'Connor, my advisor, was looking at sort of the context of community development and what it really means, because there's these greater macroeconomic and policy decisions that are made that really affect neighborhoods. And neighborhoods themselves have very little control how all these things play out. One of them, for instance, is policy decisions, like historically, the highway that was put through this area that brought many middle-class people out into the suburbs. Facilitating white flight, making Highland Park, which was traditionally a streetcar suburb of the city, built about 100 years ago. Now it's predominantly African-American and much poorer than other parts of the city. And also greater macroeconomic conditions such as deindustrialization in the city, where many manufacturing jobs left. And so many of these jobs that people normally had, which were very decent middle-class jobs, have been replaced by mainly service sector jobs, which pay much, much lower wages. And so understanding that context, understanding the forces that sort of affect community development and prevent community development from happening really helps to target efforts at promoting grassroots community development that is effective and that is long-lasting. My final slide is specifically my role and my reflections as to my service in the community, specifically with the Community Safety Initiative. This picture right here is from a Style Weekly article published last year about the first homicide victim in Highland Park in 4 years. His name was Garrick Ellis. He was a young man of 18 years old. The cause of death was a misidentification. They were looking to target someone else, and they ended up shooting him. And so he was a successful basketball player. He had a lot of goals and aspirations and wanted to, and there's further information in the article, but it talks about he wanted to buy his own house, buy a house for his mom, who was very transient at this point. and really become successful. But due to the security and safety situation, the current problems that are ongoing in this community, that didn't end up happening. And so, considering this and considering sort of my experience in this community, because Boaz and the place, the organization I've volunteered with for 3 years, is literally 2 blocks down the road from this location. It really became sort of both a personal endeavor of mine to really help this community that I spent so much time in, but also a place where I was navigating what my role was in this community, where my experiences are very different from their experiences. I'm an outsider coming in who doesn't live in the community, who doesn't really have a complete sense of what these people's lives are like on a daily basis. And I wanted to see what is my role and how can I help them more and do something more substantial than the volunteering that I had previously done. And what I found is that I learned a lot from the methods that LISC uses in terms of community organizing. For LISC, it's not just going into community, doing a project that they want to do and then leaving. It's really partnering with the community, focusing on their priorities, and looking at what LISC can do to help. It was explained to me in this way. The community has priorities, the community has goals, and they know what they need. And LISC has the ability and the expertise to help in certain areas. And so the key is to align both those efforts to find the most effective decisions possible to improve the community and focus on community development, or to find other organizations they can partner with to help build that community. And so what I've come to know is the importance of listening, hearing the concerns of the community, making sure they believe that they have a voice in the process, and then leading and then making sure that they have a responsibility in implementing the process, focusing more on in the background, and the organizing efforts in the background, and meeting their needs so they can accomplish their goals. And so what I learned is that it's to become an ally of the community. And I believe that term really sort of embodies what needs to be done in terms of community organizing and community development, is to become an ally of the community and focus on helping them achieve their goals. Because many times these community members feel like they don't have a say. They feel like their community is changing in front of them, they'll soon have to leave because of rising housing prices, and they don't have a say in the ultimate destiny of their community. And this is a huge problem, not only in Richmond, but all over the United States, and in these cities that are currently gentrifying and these communities that are changing. But when they have a say in the community, then grassroots economic development can occur, and the needle can swing in the direction of both justice and development. And so becoming an ally community, being consistent, being a part of the community, being willing to shop at the flower shop, being willing to eat at the local restaurant, being willing to engage with the local residents is a huge part of really becoming a part of that community and really engaging with them in a process that brings both of you, creates that partnership that can really cause change and really improve the lives of individuals in this community and prevent and improve safety, prevent crime and improve safety in the community. I'd like to thank Mr. and Mrs. Burhans for this amazing opportunity. I would not have been able to do this otherwise. And Veronica Fleming, who's in the audience, is the program manager for LISC. Thank you for coming. As well as Cassie Price and CC, Dr. Urquhart, my amazing advisor, and the CC staff that are putting on this event. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Anna Singer, and I was actually stayed in Richmond, like Rand, this summer, and worked at 2 nonprofits. I worked at Shalom Farms and the New Richmond, which are 2 organizations targeting food access issues. So bringing healthy, affordable food to low-income families in areas where there's not a lot of supermarkets and not a lot of exposure, and also programs around that food. So Shalom Farms has the structure of the nonprofit is they grow tons of produce with the help of the Methodist Church. in Goochland, and they transport that produce both to Feed More, which is a food bank. So they donate half of that produce to the food bank, and then they donate the other half to partners within Richmond who offer programming and free food or subsidized produce to people within the community. And they also have their own programs in various locations around Richmond. And then New Richmond is another nonprofit. They're a smaller nonprofit, more fledgling, just starting up. And they have 5 urban agricultural sites within the south side of Richmond. And they also have programming and donate to a local food distribution center. So where was I? So most of the time I was in Southside, so south of the James. George Woods High School has, in purple is New Richmond, in red I was with Shalom Farms. So I was at George Woods High School, which has a small community garden. Jerusalem Connection Garden, which is actually in a bingo parlor. They just give out the space. So it was really amusing. I saw a lot of interesting, I know more about bingo than I know better than And Reed Elementary School, I did a farm stand, prescription group. I'll talk about it more later. But just in general idea. And Shalom Farms also has an office up in Northside. And I lived at BC. And my boss worked at the Richmond. It was a lot of driving. I drove a lot this summer, so I was just like all over the place. So I'm just gonna give you my average week. So Monday I worked at the Plaza Market. I was actually just there, so it's still going. And it's a predominantly Hispanic market, so lots of Latino music blasting while we're selling produce. We had one little bar truck comes and sells tacos. Other people have queso fresco and just like corn. They give out to people, and then we also just got to know everyone really well. We went there every Monday. We got to know each other really well. We just hang out, and it was a great time. I made some really awesome friends there. And eventually, we actually incorporated kids from a neighboring community who came and helped sell the produce. So the mission of the organization is to try and target like children and low-income families to try and teach them about food. So we just try to incorporate them in and just give that exposure, but also reach out to the community and bring the produce. On Tuesdays, I was at Reed Elementary School, which is also in Southside, and there, New Richmond has a community garden. And so we took, at the beginning of the summer, we actually used Shalom Farms produce, and we brought that produce and sold it at Reed Elementary School. And we incorporated the children into the selling, and also Nigel is a 14-year-old who lives within the community, who's always there helping out. And so we sell produce, and in the extra time, I would get my hair done, but like a kid, I had so many good looks, it was a lot of fun. Tuesdays. On Wednesdays, I worked at the Southwood apartment complex, which is also in Southside, and I helped the community garden there and with programming for kids, where we just taught kids about how to cook the food, how to eat it, just expose, and also how to take care of the garden and really see where your food is coming from, which was kind of exciting. I've never really gotten to spend this much time in the garden before either, so that was really cool. Lots of Hispanics, again, my Spanish improved dramatically. And we played soccer. It's very Latino, so everyone's playing soccer. I got better at soccer. I'm really not that good, but it was a lot of fun. On Thursdays, I was at the Ramsey Church in Southside, and Shalom Farms has a prescription produce program, which basically has 16 participants. Jen would know, she also worked with them. So he would incorporate different participants, and we'd give them one serving of produce for each member of their family for each day of the week. So a lot of produce just as free as part of the program. So people with dietary illnesses and stuff like that. So it was very helpful for them, and it was really cool hearing success stories of people who just really felt healthier from eating it. So we sold to the general community as well. It was all part of the Caravan is there, which is the Bon Secours health clinic. And then Fridays I would just work in the gardens. So I would either be at New Richmond in their various gardens, or I would go up to Shalom Farms and I would help them on the farm. So here, we have our resident toad. I would also post on the Facebook page, so that was something I put on there, just to kind of show people what it's like to garden, and just volunteers and other people, my boss and the other intern. And on Saturdays, I would work at Jerusalem Connection bingo parlor. So we would pick produce from our garden and we would just distribute it there. So it was a lot of fun. It was hard. A lot of people who go to bingo don't necessarily want to buy produce. But it was definitely exposure and a lot of fun anyways. So me and Nija, the 14-year-old who worked there with me, we would afterwards we would buy the cupcakes from the bingo parlor and eat them together, and it was a lot of fun. So challenges I faced, I don't know if any of you have been to the Brown Bag, which talks about food access, but this is something Dominic Barrett, my boss at Shalom Farms, talked about. But access to healthy food is not the only thing about bringing healthy food to community. There's a lot of what you were born with, you tend to just eat whatever you were raised on, which I know is true too. I've ate more vegetables than I've ever eaten before the summer. So it's how to reach out to people, not just show the food, but also get people involved in like the making of the food and really like take commitment for the food that they see. And I also realized like the difficulty with full-time staff and volunteers. It was hard being I was kind of like a volunteer, so it was kind of like trying to really motivate yourself and really feel like responsible and take commitment of what you're doing. I think it's hard for any volunteers. It's hard like people come in, they come for a little bit, they're not like completely committed to long term. So it's hard for nonprofits to really gain that firm like going forward push. And less structure than I'm used to. Again, college campus is a very structured environment. So I was just learning. It was a lot of fun. And time outside in the hot sun. Also, Virginia's hot in the summer, so as we all know. And building relationships with kids was kind of challenging for me because I've never really done that before. But also very rewarding because kids are really awesome, especially the 3rd and 4th graders. They're very smart, but they also still have this excitement about life. So, how do you get people to eat that carrot, I guess, is a question that you ask. I don't know that's what a lot of our produce looks like. And my takeaways, my Spanish improved a lot, actually, just because I was in Southside and there are a lot of Hispanic, a very large Hispanic population there. And I learned better organizational skills, like how to manage my schedule, how to really take commitment and be self-directed. I have more realistic views of food access. A lot of the reading that I've done before this, I've taken a few classes on food access issues. They've been very academic, so learning about how you can better implement things and how you can better do things, but you're not on the ground. So I was on the ground really seeing how this all works out. And improved interest in community gardening. I'm actually in the parking lot project. I don't know if you guys have heard this, but I'm creating a community garden, so it's already kind of there. So if you want to go look, and greater understanding of outside. So that's Richmond. It's very exciting. And I just wanted to thank Dr. Erkwater, my faculty mentor, Cassie Price for helping me, Sylvia Gale, because I was always kind of unsure, so we needed a lot of support. Brian Figueroa, who actually coordinated the urban agriculture fellows, which I was a part of. Everyone at Shalom Farms for New Richmond, he's here for New Richmond. And everyone else, Heather, there's so many people, Marsh, who all helped. And also, so PR, there's actually Shalom Farms, we're going to have a market in Southside on the 18th. It should be a lot of fun. So.
I realized that I'm one of the last ones to go, and I thought, how do I get this group animated again? And I was like, well, maybe I should tell them to get up and stretch, and I realized I do not have any authority to tell any of you this group are not in a classroom. And then I thought maybe I would use the Dr. Hoyle method, who uses the Socratic method to teach and ask students. I was like, I didn't think that would work either, so we're just going to try this out. So my name is Mel. I work in the Dominican Republic. I actually going to stand off to the side because I'm not supposed to stand in front of the podiums. But This was actually my third time coming back, and the first time I went with an SSIR class, we did a microfinance project, and I went the next summer to work with that same organization. It was transformative for me because I saw a lot of the business background that I was getting, the accounting, the finance classes that I thought were so boring and that I didn't want to pay attention to, completely made sense in that moment, which was fantastic. And then I went to Chile to study abroad, and I thought maybe I'd get a summer internship in Chile, but my mind was always going back to the Dominican Republic. And Dr. Mace, who I've never had a class with before, but we're like best friends, connected me to a University of Richmond alum who did Peace Corps in the Dominican Republic. And once I spoke with him, he helped me find the perfect organization for me. So I wanted to do some research because I wanted to learn something new. My kind of specialty was economic development initiatives that people in these communities are starting. But I also wanted to be very hands-on because that's another incredible aspect of learning. So what I did, this time I learned about self-finance, savings, and credit communities. And in the nonprofit world, anybody that comes up with a model titles it whatever they want, but there's really 1,000 ways to say this. So they're essentially informal banking communities. The purpose for these things is that in the Dominican Republic, the eastern half of the country is essentially sugarcane plantations. And the type of people that work in these plantations are Haitian migrant workers who live in very rural areas, and it's incredibly expensive to get to town. So it's like $6 or $7 just for one trip. Or they don't have documentation because they're migrant workers. They've been living there for their entire lives, and due to some political things going on, and they cannot open a bank account. So for us, we kind of take that for granted because we all have bank accounts. We know how interest works. We know how loan payments work. But there's a lot of people that don't. And not having access to that doesn't help either, right? It keeps these people in kind of a darkness without having any financial literature. And if they were able to be in a position where they could open a bank account, they wouldn't understand the language, they wouldn't understand how it works. So in Spanish, the model is called Comunidades Autofinanciadas, so out of self-finance communities, excuse me. The organization I worked with was Community Enterprise Solutions, actually started by 2 investment bankers, so I thought that was cool. And yeah, I didn't know. The first thing I did was I went to the country and trained for a little bit, and then I did some research. So this was a project I didn't know. I essentially used online resources because a lot of these projects are actually being implemented in Eastern Africa, and I knew that was very different. I just wanted to kind of get build a framework and get context. And then once I started realizing how it worked, I designed the process because I'm a very ideas person for the people that work with me. So this is very hard, and I said if I want to keep track of all these things, I need to write them down. So I created a manual knowing that it would change, and initially the manual was only based on my research, but it was essentially said if we wanted to start these groups here, how could we do it? And it outlined the process of how the groups would work, I went into detail, like I drew little stick people on the manual, how they could sit, who was going to be in the leadership position. And I think what's important to point out in these groups, the main point is education and running these groups, right? So there's not somebody from an outside organization going into community, leading a meeting. I was training people based on what I had learned to be able to train others to do this themselves. And anything that they earned, any interest that they raised within that group was kept and divided amongst them. So it was teaching a lot of concepts like dividends and interest rates and monthly payments and how do you keep track of that. And although passion, which I think I have, are very essential to these kinds of things, it doesn't work if you don't keep track of the loans. It doesn't work if you don't keep track of the interest. And it definitely doesn't work if people are not understanding what's going on. And that's kind of the cycle that we wanted to break. We wanted to make the people in these communities be able to do this kind of stuff themselves. And then I gave a presentation to a bunch of community leaders. A lot of them were entrepreneurs doing fantastic things. And I said, hey guys, this is what I've learned. You live here, I don't. So let me tell you, what I know, and then you tell me whether it'll work or not. It was an incredibly dynamic conversation. We sat down for 2 hours, and they were like asking me, what about risk? What if somebody steals a little money? What if people don't want to pay? And that really forced me to challenge the model and to say, hey, this isn't like God's gift to earth or something. We can change this model and make it more useful. So with my communication and dialogue with them, we kind of created the model so that it worked best based on what they told me was going to happen. And these are, by the way, people who active in the communities, and oftentimes they're actually, lead social movements and are really involved. And then I trained them to know essentially what I had learned, because I realized, and this was a turning point in my project, I realized that I was going to leave in 2 months, and this had absolutely no value if I simply started a group or two and said, hey, this is really cool, I learned about the model, I started the groups, and then I left. There was nobody would know how to run them afterwards because I wouldn't have taken the time. So I said, in recognizing my role, which I think is a lot what Rand talked about, I recognized that I wasn't going to be out talking to people and talking to communities and trying to get them to buy into what we were doing, but I was going to support and I was going to train others so that it continued to grow even after I left. I went to all the community meetings, I answered questions whenever I could, but I really saw my role kind of as a behind the scenes. Because do I know how to start these groups? No, they know how to start these groups a lot better than I do. So I wanted to make sure that we use their talents and their knowledge of the community as best as possible. So then we went and we pitched this idea to communities, and that was again a very dynamic conversation. They were super skeptical, and this was a turning point for me because the entire time when I was researching, I had come up with situations like, what if this happens? Okay, maybe we can, this will be the solution. If this happens, this will be the solution. And within 10 minutes of the community meeting, they had figured out everything that was worked a ton better than anything I had said, and had broken through all of my theories and all of my solutions to something that really worked for them. And I thought how poignant for that, for that to happen, that I spent all this time theorizing, and it was completely inefficient and unnecessary because people could do that so much better. Within the context of all of this, I really needed to recognize the social things that were going on. There's a social movement in the Dominican Republic right now to give documentation to children that were born to Haitian parents because they currently don't have it. And the 2 people, Franklin and Natalie, that I trained, who are now coordinators and are now opening these groups, are actually part of that movement as well. And they are people who were born to Haitian parents and do not have documents. They're very much affected. The political scheme, which was, again, a lot of this kind of Haitian-Dominican dynamic that goes on. The ethical questions that arose throughout my project, and of course the economic, because we were working with people that were in destitute poverty, so things could change at any moment. Their entire economy is run by sugarcane, so whenever there's sugarcane, people are cutting and there's activity. Whenever there isn't, there's nothing moving around the community, so it's very difficult. This is a fun slide. Before I talk about this, I also want to talk about my host family. My homestay brother was someone who, he told me that I have to tell everyone that I meet that he pitches 92 miles an hour. So I'll let you know that. He was actually drafted to play for the Milwaukee baseball team. I don't know what the name is, but had some kind of issues along the way. And there's so many fantastic players in the Dominican Republic. If you don't get that chance, you miss it. But what he did is he now trains smaller kids in the neighborhood who have a lot of talent to pitch, and he gets a percentage of their contract or something. But I walked in the house, or I walked in the country, saying, oh, I don't like baseball, but saying that in the Dominican Republic is not and I was like, I'm gonna make you like baseball. So every day after practice, he would bring his bat that they use at practice, and then it was like 8 p.m. so you could barely see. We would walk around picking bottle caps up from the street, and that is how I learned to pitch. So that's actually why a lot of Dominican players are really good, because they play with these like tiny bottle caps. Anyway, back to the project. There's, as a lot of things, there's a beginning, there's an end, and Dr. Howard kind of stole my thunder, but then there's like, so you think alike. And then there's some way that you get there. It's never linear, it's never easy. I think you face a lot of challenges, you see a lot of injustice, you develop relationships, you see some relationships can't develop, expectations are met or maybe they're broken. And the one thing we never talk about is failure. And that is so crucially important because that is 80% of how you learn, at least in my opinion. And I failed actually because in the beginning of the internship we said I was going to start 5 groups. And by the time that I was done, I had started 0. And I think it didn't go bad. I think initially, yes. But when I realized that in order to be comfortable with failure, and in order to use this knowledge to move forward, you really needed to redefine success. So instead of opening those 5 groups and leaving, I trained other people to be able to continue this process after I left. Dr. Dekti and I, she was my advisor during the summer, we also developed a database that I trained someone in the office to work on that essentially keeps track of all of the information on these groups. So we will know the amount of savings, the amount of loans, what interest rate has been developed, how many people. We also have the demographic information. And like I said, passion does a lot, but if you don't have these measures, then all of this can fall short. The other thing was being innovative. So this world is constantly changing, especially with people that live in incredibly vulnerable situations. You cannot say, hey, this is the model, this is what I think works, and no matter what else comes along, this is the best thing. You always have to be willing to do something better. Another one is flexibility. So I don't see this model as the end, I see it as a means to an end. So if anyone can be part of these groups and learn how to calculate interest and save and not, stuff the money under the mattress where it loses value, and that if they have the opportunity to go to a proper bank and a proper institution, that they can do so in a much more educated way. And the last thing is compassion. So I think none of this matters if we don't understand that people are at the center of everything that we do. And it's not about learning models, it's not about learning theories, it's really about connecting with people, responding to their problems, and not thinking that you know the answer or you know the solution. So I thought I was gonna cry, and I didn't, so that's good. I'm a senior, so all of these things are very emotional times. But for those people that know me, I kind of tend to think of myself as a mosaic of the people that I've met, my family, and people in my life. And I can say after this experience, I feel like I'm a different person because of the people that touched my lives in this way. And they were incredibly bright, incredibly energetic, and they were vulnerable enough to connect with me and be compassionate with me, and I couldn't help but do the same. So thank you for listening.
working on food access in the city of Richmond. And my internship itself was sort of twofold. I worked with Shalom Farms, which Anna did some of my job telling you about. And I also worked for Ann Darby, who's a city planner and is fabulous, and has worked on a bunch of task forces and initiatives that have sort of sprung up separately from the city government and have all proposed to have somebody employed by the government in charge of food access. And they said, okay, well, Ann, you can do that in addition to your other full-time job. So she got an intern to do something for research. And my work with Shalom consisted mostly of working on a prescription flowing produce plan, which Anna mentioned. And I worked on 2 locations with that, one of which was Creighton Court, and one was in Southside, close to Southwood. We worked with mostly residents of these public housing areas, and most of them were diabetic. And as Anna mentioned, we provided 1 serving of healthy food, vegetables for every member of their family every day of the week. But that was only the first step. You know, getting healthy food onto the shelves of grocery stores, putting up grocery stores in general, isn't going to do anything if people don't know how to prepare that food in a way that tastes good to them. And haven't, come around culturally to incorporating that food into their lives, and don't understand why it's important to give it to their kids and to eat it themselves. So it was more education than anything else, and finding ways to make that education happen in a way that didn't feel like some white girl coming into your neighborhood and saying, hey, I know how to feed your family better than you do. Making it more about allyship, as Ray mentioned, than about teachers and students. And people have mentioned so many great things, as Mel mentioned. Arming people with the skills to continue that community reinvigorization after we've left. And we had some failure, but we also had some success, most of which was anecdotal. people would come back to us every week and say, my kids tried broccoli for the first time and I've lost this many pounds and my diabetes is more under control. And that program is still happening throughout the city. I'm working for Shalom now, running a farm stand where we were in the south side because when the program ended, people said, how are we going to get our vegetables now? So Shalom makes that happen. And Anna talked, I think, enough about kind of the way that the nonprofit is organized, but I feel incredibly lucky to have worked with them. They're very intentional operators in the city, and I think they're making a lot more happen than people needing more broccoli. I also worked at the farm sometimes, which was another kind of fun, and learned a lot about sustainable growing methods, and got a good kind of bird's eye view of the whole spectrum of the way food gets to people in the city, because I was out there growing the broccoli one day, and then the next day I was chatting with diabetic mothers of 6 and giving them their broccoli. And then I would go to Ann Darby's office and research the systemic inequalities that were putting these diabetic mothers of 6 in situations where they had to feed their kids Cheetos. And I worked for Ann Darby mostly on a report about alternative for-profit grocery store models for a task force that was newly formed looking at initiatives that the city might take up to address food access. And I never thought I would get so excited about business models, but seriously, like employee stock ownership is an incredible thing. Direct public offerings just really fire me up. Which is that was one of the most exciting components of my summer, and it's exciting in part because much of what I found was suitable steps to take for the city are already being taken. The Richmond Food Co-op has 550 members, so if you're interested in joining that, they need some more. Look into it. And there's a grocery store that's going to be opening up in the East End in the next year or two that's geared toward food access and workforce training and getting people out of the community if they want to into a better situation. And one of the features of all of the case study grocery stores that I looked at that are successful around the country right now is that they have a community advisory group of some sort where people who live in the area and shop at this store are providing them feedback constantly and making suggestions. So my sort of primary suggestion to the task force was that they create one of these groups for the city as a whole, bringing their people power and their connections together to find these community leaders so that every individual co-op and grocery store that wouldn't be able to compile a group like this on its own can come to them and get feedback. And they're doing that, which I'm really psyched about. I have class during the meetings now, so I don't know how it's progressing. But I was very lucky to be in the room with those people. And I think you're going to see some exciting things from them real soon. And the other component of my summer was my academic research, which looked at the discourse of advocacy for food access in Richmond, but as one slice of the broader sort of national conversation that's happening on food access right now. Because we talk about, the food itself, and we talk about the systemic broader injustices and socioeconomic factors that lead to food access inequality. But I don't hear as many people, and for understandable reasons, taking the time out of their busy 80-hour weeks as directors of nonprofits to think about the language with which we're presenting the work that we do and why we do it to the communities that we're aiming to serve, or to volunteers, or to donors. So I wanted to explore that with the help of my trusty linguistics professor, Tom, who's a lovely man. And so I ended up looking mostly at the websites of 3 nonprofits working on food access in Richmond. one of which was Renew and Shalom and Tricycle Gardens. And websites are sort of fishy evidence in part because they're old. Usually, an organization creates it when they start, and the organization may change, but the website doesn't always change with it. And for another, they are geared for obvious reasons, in large part toward attracting donors and attracting volunteers. But I think that there's still an important indicator of one facet of the conversation that's happening in Richmond. And I found a number of things. I used corpus analysis, which is a lot of fun, and it involves computers doing things that I don't really understand with massive bodies of text. And so you can put all of the text that you're looking to study into the computer, and it will magically reveal things to you that you can't see with the naked eye. Like the frequencies of words that are used, and the contexts in which words are used. So that was how I studied the discourse, and I came to some conclusions, including, am I good? Okay. One thing that when I kind of talked very briefly with Dominic at Shalom and RD about, I'm doing some research on the language of food access advocacy, and they would say, food desert. Food desert is a term kind of blanket for areas, neighborhoods, geographical regions in which technically there's not a grocery store within a mile of where a bunch of people live in a city. In rural areas, it's something like 10 miles. That's a food desert. And everybody that uses it in the nonprofit sector, at least, that I spoke to, seem to be aware that there's something not quite right about it. But at this point, politicians are familiar with it, and you just gotta kind of get in their ear. So people continue to use it. But from a linguistic perspective, food desert is perhaps a more problematic term than people realize. In part because when we think about what a desert is, that isn't something that changes or that anybody seeks to change. We don't problematize the Sahara and say, okay, we need to bring our water there. A desert is just a part of the landscape, and we accept it, and it's static. Not exactly the way you want to configure this really problematic social issue that countless nonprofits and community efforts are driving change toward. But on a more subtle level, food desert does something called nominalization, in which a verb becomes a noun. And we do this all the time, and any writing teacher will tell you it's a problem. Nominalization is one example. Anything with T-I-O-N on the end of it, basically like long words that look like they're kind of Latin roots. Like what's an example? A nominalization, sorry, difficult to explain, but you guys all know when you see it. I'll show you with food desert as an example at the same time. The verb to desert someone becomes a noun when we configure it as a desert. But when we talk about it as a desert, the place that's deserted, using that language makes it easier for us to kind of ignore that there are specific agents acting to create that situation, that A has deserted B, So when we talk about food deserts, it can be easy to kind of turn our noses away from the political institutions and institutionalized racism and grocery store executives making cold-hearted business decisions and whatever you want to blame. There are, so many things we can blame. But these specific factors, specific people who have created this situation. So I suggest that we start calling them food deserted areas to call our minds to the fact that someone has done this. And so someone needs to do something about it because this has been done to someone. So that was one piece. I also looked at, on the websites more specifically, I looked at ways that the word you is used to think about who exactly we're speaking to. And there's an extent to which you've got to talk to your donors, you've got to talk to your volunteers, but exclusively the word you on these websites is addressed to affluent people, to people who have the time to come and volunteer, to people who want to come out to the farm because it's a fun way to spend a Saturday afternoon and relax. I really am so glad to share this paper with you because I'm terrible at explaining things with my mouth, but it's much more organized on paper. So please, I would love to share with you if you're interested. And you can see all of the context in which you appears, but it's really staggering. There's no sense that anybody who reads these websites is going to be somebody who lives in a food desert or doesn't already know what food access is and why it's a problem. And I think that's really serious. I think that while it's crucial to seek volunteers and speak to the people who are already engaged with this issue and get them further engaged, it doesn't take a corpus analysis to tell you that none of these websites have a section that say, hey, do you live in a grocery store or do you live in an area where you can't get to a grocery store easily? What's the like social, racial history of your being in that situation, and what can you do about it? And here's how to connect with other people who live in areas like yours and are concerned. And here's what we're doing. Here's how we're working with you. So that's my sort of primary suggestion. And I looked at a bunch of other ways that these websites, as a representation of the discourse more broadly, exclude the people that they seek to help, not by any fault of their own. And really, I mean, this is like the biggest caveat in the entire world to this research, that the people I've encountered who are doing this work on food access in Richmond are, very sensitive to the racial and cultural issues at play, and very keen to be as inclusive and as appropriate as possible. But it's hard when you're on deadlines and you're producing things on the fly and your website is from 6 years ago and it's terrible. It's hard to keep track of your language at all times, so the intern will do that for you. And just a couple of other examples, because this is really fun stuff. I looked at the reading level that the text on these websites clocked in at, because you can test that. Fun to see how the papers you write. Which I haven't actually, that just struck me right now. But one of the websites, which I won't name specifically, is written at a 20th grade reading level, as in you have to have gone to college basically to understand what they're saying about food access. The others weren't so bad, but still at the high school level, which the standard I think for journalism is 8th grade. I read that somewhere. But I think that's appropriate, right? Like, we might as well be finding ways to talk about these issues in language that's as accessible as possible. And actually, I shared my paper about this with Dominic and Anne, and they kind of disseminated it to some other food access people. And the guy who runs the organization with the 20th grade level emailed me and said, hey, we just revamped our website, so can you do all of your research again? And see if we improved at all, which I haven't gotten around to yet, but I will let you all know how it turns out when I do, because I'm super excited that people are interested in engaging with me in this conversation, and everybody's taking it as very constructive criticism from a very humble intern. So it's been a really rewarding experience to kind of play my part in initiating that dialogue and helping an already very sensitive and often very highly successful discourse refine itself just a little more. In addition to learning how to grow kale in high heat and learning how to communicate with people whose rapid Spanish I can't understand. I would also like to thank the CCE and the Bergenses and Tom and all of you for being here and watching just me without anything to distract your eyes when you're tired. And I hope that you all enjoy the little cheesecake squares and have a wonderful rest of your evening.
Well, I know some of you might have questions, and I asked you to join us for thank you for the advertisement for the cheese squares and other things. I just want to again thank the faculty mentors, our community partner site supervisor, for your mentorship of students, to all the funders of the Bergen's March, and of us Civic Fellowships. We could do this without you. And to these amazing students, I read the headlines